Good morning. What is great, good, and real? And wake up, welcome, not wake 'em. Welcome to day 16 of the Do You Rules live stream experience. I'm still cliche Jeff, at least I think I am. Although I think I'm going somewhat crazy, trying to get settled in here. I'm really, I don't know how to explain how I feel right now. I am, Matt, I've just been going through the last hour of getting my kids ready for school, getting them out the door. And if I could put a tape recorder, I know that sounds old school, right? But if I could put a speaker or a mic or go live on my thoughts when I'm not going live to speak my thoughts, I always feel like it comes out a lot better because I've been thinking a lot of things this morning. And so part of what I want to do is sort of go on a rant because I want to ask the question, what are we thinking? Like, what are we thinking? Are we even thinking? Are you aware? Are we aware? I don't want to make this individualized. I'm getting excited continuing to think about this. But self improvement, the do you rules, and why I believe so strongly about doing what I do is really fundamental. It probably isn't as glamorous or influential or sexy as some of the other self improvement channels from the perspective of I would just really love it if we could all have a conversation open and honestly about what we're thinking. Because what we're thinking is everything. And the more that I continue to experience the world, first through my own thoughts and realize what I'm actually thinking, I really start to question what is the world thinking? Because, man, we do some, I don't want to say questionable, but left to think about it, I wonder, are you even thinking? So we'll get into that. And I also want to talk about the power of resting because part of the reason why I feel extra excited and hyped is I didn't wake up at 3:30 today. I woke up at 6:30, actually closer to 6. And that 2.5 hours has been everything so far. Standard, day 16, water, chapstick, water, however you want to see it. I really do hope you're having a blessed day. I do, because part of what has me excited is some of what I just saw, which is a very just regular thing. We're talking about the human experience. And the human experience and the improvement experience, the self improvement journey is so much more about the little things. How you improve yourself is always the micro because it's important. And the most micro of things is always, what are you thinking? And I started to think about what are we thinking and what are you thinking and how it could impact you. Because when I woke up this morning, I felt very strongly, if this is day 16, 15 straight days of waking up at 3:30, my bedtimes have been very, very inconsistent. Last night I went to bed at 10, closer to 10:30. And so when you start that, there's a compound effect to the reality of you keep going to bed at 10, 10:30, you're waking up at 3:30, you're going to start to break down. You don't want to do that. So a lot of why I think this is important and the fundamentals to the do you rules and you being on your self-improvement journey is learning how to navigate and negotiate with yourself. Because if you don't, you can get deregulated, sort of, I think is the psychological term, where you, emotionally, you start to feel very stressed out that maybe you're not doing it exactly how you want to do it. You had an off day, you gave yourself a rest day. What does that mean? Oh my God, I suck all of a sudden at life. It's not like that. The reality to any sort of improvement process, as in business, this is why I love what I do. The majority, 95, 98% of what I do and why I get paid what I get paid and why I'm able to be successful and why it's very fruitful for me in the way that it's successful and fruitful for me is that I'm able to come into a space, the information technology space, see what currently exists. Like we have these set of processes, these set of applications and technologies, and we want to move it over here, which means you want to improve that. And so in that way, there's a reality to there's already an existing and current state. So the very first thing I do for any sort of endeavor business wise, outside of figuring out, like, so you think we're going to make this multi-million dollar investment. What are the players in the field? That's very easy. Understanding the market, but it's how those players play in with your current environment. Just because somebody's doing something in the information technology space or in the entrepreneurial space or any kind of product line, there's a product, pick a product, any product. Just because it might be the highest selling and the best rated doesn't mean it's the best for the environment you're in. That's a big thing. So the power to that in the self-improvement space is this. When did you come to the realization that you want to improve your life? When you were born? Probably not. You didn't know nothing when you were born. That's the brevity too and the depth of consciousness, that you could be this thinking thing that is thinking all these thoughts that don't really belong to you because you never taught yourself how to think. You were always taught how to think. So in that way, you're never really a teacher. You're just sort of not even a learner. You're a mimic and a repeater of other people's legacies, processes, etc. It's not an indictment. It's not to be disrespectful in any capacity. That's just the reality of how we work. Also, we as people, we look to mimic. It's part of how we learn and start to apply processes. Like, hey, this life thing, how does this work? You go from infant to all the stages of life. And then at some point, boom, you're this adult who makes their own decisions. And some of us struggle with the decision-making process and we can't figure out why. Yeah, it goes back. It goes all the way back. And certainly I'm no expert, but I understand enough about how consciousness works, how logic works, how we're built, how we're programmed. And it's, again, not an indictment on the world or society. It's just the reality to the exposure of life. How else would you know this life thing if somebody didn't introduce you to it, right? Cool. You decide you want to improve. If you were like me, you were 39. I'm going to be 44 this year. As I've referenced before, you went through 39 years of life, 39 years of programming. You have an infrastructure, for lack of a better term, in place. You have a set of processes in place. You have applications and programs and cycles and rhythms and patterns and habits that keep you, you. And if at any point you make a change to any of that, it has an effect, an impact. We talk about the deregulation and the emotional experience, because I'm big on the emotional experience, because if you can't control your emotions, you won't be able to control your thoughts, and then you won't be able to control what you can control as far as being able to be successful with the outcomes you're looking for in your life. So in that way, when you decide, I'm going to improve, you can't ignore what you currently do that makes you, you. Because whether you agree with it or not, whether you like the outcomes of your life or not, it makes you successful in this way. If we talk about the emotional experience and the deregulation, what causes stress, anxiety, and puts us in sort of a panic and a discomfort in life, it's to not be predictable. Because then your autonomic nervous system and what creates the panic, the fight or flight, when you invoke that, your emotions don't like that. You come to consciousness, and as we've talked about before, 95% of your life is subconscious. It just flows. You don't have to think about it. 5% is conscious. And if you bring yourself to consciousness in a way that's very stressful, well, not only are you feeding your subconscious state to build off of stress, but you're deregulating yourself. So however you live your life today, whatever the success is, what you believe is successful or not, you live it in a very routine way. And any break to that routine will cause you to come to consciousness, will cause some stress, and will have you start to question yourself. What am I doing? Is this going to work? Why am I doing it? Until you can overcome that, stabilize, and make that a very normal subconscious rhythm and pattern, right? So a lot of what I hope to accomplish is, regardless of what you're looking to improve on, regardless of the level of exposure, even if you're looking for a stage or a certain level of material richness, I'm cool with all that. I don't care what you want to do or how you want to do it. I'm not going to tell you or suggest what you should do or how you should do it. It's not that I don't care, but that's you. Go do you. I'm going to do me. But here's what I also realize and learn is that in and around you doing you, there's, again, not no one, but the reality of anyone living a solo life is very slim, which means that because we're social creatures, we create legacy, which a lot of time implies family. So you can have all the success you want on the surface. We know this, we've heard the stories. But if you come back home and home is broken, I question the level of success in your life. And the first home we fix is our own home. When my home here, when my internal home, how I feel about myself, how I talk to myself, how I consciously work through my life, and how I use the power of Creator and God in me has everything to do with my impact to life. Because then I'm able to either I understand how to apply myself strategically and tactically to all the relationships in my life. And to have the most pleasurable of experiences as often as possible, to have a rhythm, a pattern, and a routine of constant comfort and complacency and peace. I should say not complacency, contentment. I want to get to a place where, and I believe I've achieved just about the maximum level of where I can in my life. I have a lot of peace. It's not to say that, like, I'm about to go into a rant soon about what the hell are you thinking. There's not conflict and friction in my life. And even in the relationships with the people who I have close relationships with, it's not to say that there's not conflict, there's conflict. But the way I navigate it and work through it is highly conducive and most prudent to success for me to achieve a level of peace in my life. So if I wanted to offer anything, if I could do anything to say, what will be the focus of the Do You rules? How do you get peace in your life? Because you're a thinking thing and you're always going to be thinking things. And if you're not thinking the things that you want to think to keep yourself regulated, life's going to hurt. I don't care what you do or how successful you are. And then the reality to that too is when you find success in one domain, you'll tend to, sorry, I got a phone call. You'll tend to overfocus and overcompensate in that one space and then lose sight of how to be able to apply it everywhere else, which is home. And so there's a lot of realities to keeping home secure and safe and sound and balanced at a level of peace requires you to understand what you're thinking. Requires you to know that you're thinking all day, whether you're conscious of it or not. And there's certain rhythms and patterns you build up that will allow you to ease into your thinking and ease into your flow state and allow the creativity and imagination and all those things that we learned as a child to run rampant in our minds and create this beautiful, luxurious world of peace. But if you're not in a state of mind where consciously you are balanced in a way that is conducive to peace, well, then you're going to have consistent friction. And the reality to my question about what are you thinking is that if you're constantly thinking in a frenetic way, if you're constantly thinking in a fast-paced way, if you're constantly thinking in a go, 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 then I question what level of peace you have. Or I question if you realize that in order for you to have peace, in order for your mind to be regulated, or in order for neurologically the chemical cocktail that's in your brain of dopamine and cortisol, the adrenal situations that happen, in order for it to be stable, you have to produce, relatively speaking, the same rhythms and patterns and habits and routines every day. So watch how this works, right? If you're constantly thinking, as I just said, in a frenetic way, and you're constantly like in a rush, you watch a lot of videos and people talk about going out and creating these spaces and these environments. I chuckle a little bit, not because I think it's crazy or that it's not conducive to a peaceful living, but I think there's an extreme, right? Do you go off the grid? There's people creating their own communities, right? Their own farms, and they're milking their own cows, and they're getting their own chickens and eggs. And I'm not, look, that's just the reality of life. And the argument for that is we're not supposed to be these people who are constantly rushing to get out, rushing to wake up, to rush to get out of the house, to rush the kids to school, to rush to get to a job, to work all these hours, come home tired, rush to eat, rush to get to bed, to rush to do it all over again. I don't know how to respond to whether I think that is conducive to a peaceful lifestyle. I would just ask then, what do you think is the lifestyle you want? Do you not want to work? I don't think that's the answer. Do you want to go off the grid? Go ahead. Do you want a level of success? Well, what does that mean? Do you have to be in a rush all the time? No, you don't. And so some of the standard routines of how you self-improve, wake up earlier. It's not so much like, why do you work on yourself? Because I don't want to be in a rush all the time. Part of what I realized today when I give myself a couple of extra hours of sleep, I feel the pressure of time compressed because all the things I have to do, I'm not ahead of it. So I create a frenetic pace, which can cause stress. If you don't realize that that's occurring and you're repeating that over and over and over, guess what you've built up for a thought process? Guess what you've built up for a system of functionality? You only function in a high frenetic, high stress state. And the minute that you actually reduce the stress, you start to go crazy because you think, I got to rush. You misplace your keys all the time because that's part of your rhythms and patterns and habits. And you haven't realized and come to the realization that that keeps you peaceful. I'm telling you, if you start to transition into giving yourself more time and you start to, oh, wow, I have my keys and all that, what's going to happen is you're going to come into a moment of silence. And you're not going to know what to do with yourself because you haven't practiced silence. And the minute you chill and relax and come at ease, you think you're at peace. But now you're driving yourself crazy because you're thinking about what you're thinking about. And the more you think about what you're thinking about because you haven't practiced thinking, the more stressed, the more deregulated you actually get. Why? Because you're constantly practicing. I forget my keys. I hit the snooze button. I go at the last minute. I kick the dog. I scream at the wife. I scream at the kids. I rush them out. I give them cereal for, I'm not saying none of this is wrong. It's not about right, wrong, and different. It's just about this is the pace you've built up. This is why we talk about you have to respond to that text message. You got to pick up that phone call. You got to scroll because why? It got to constantly be boom, 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 boom. And when you live like that, then your mental state, how you're built and what you're designing for consciousness, if you break that, essentially you're addicted to who you are. You're addicted to exactly what you do. If you would have stopped, this is why I wonder what we're thinking when we're thinking it. We think that we want to solve our problems, but we could think about 61 problems. Have you thought about 61 ways to solve the 61 problems you have? The reality is probably not. The reality is you probably thought of 61 different ways to talk about the 61 different problems until you created 61 more different ways because that's how you're regulated. You're regulated to constantly worry about the problems but not fix it. And so you're emitting and creating a vibration and a frequency, your neurological cocktail, that if for me to be balanced, I have to be stressed. For me to be balanced, I got to be in a rush. For me to be balanced, I got to be moving fast. But you're really doing nothing, at least relative to what are you complaining about. If you have no complaints in your life, then it's likely because you're really in line and aligned with what you're thinking. And so therefore, since you're aligned with what you're thinking, it's all good. There's nothing to change. But if you constantly feel like I'm day 16 in, I got to make a change. I can't make a change. I can't sustain the change. I go back and default into my old rhythms and patterns. It's because you can't break that. You're addicted to it. That's how you've accepted living your life. And so I question again, what are you thinking? And part of what I wanted to get tangential on, as far as the rant and what are people thinking, two things happened to me this morning, which blew my mind. And the first time it was while I was dropping my daughter off. And we live in a community, all right? It's early in the morning. It's rush hour for school drop-off, right? Which implies what? People are frenetically getting out to not be late. Everybody wants to be late. Everybody's rush, rush, rush. Get your kids to school. I think that's what it looks like. I'm just watching. So we have this community. That's an obvious community. It's a community of homes with a big community entrance and exit. The entrance and exit goes in, and you can enter to the left, you can enter to the right, you can exit from the left, you can exit from the right. So as I'm pulling up to exit my community, during the rush hour of dropping kids off, because just like a Starbucks line, if you go into Starbucks at 8:30, all the 9 to 5 people are backed up out the door trying to get their coffee, right? It's logical. New York City, I grew up in New York. You come home and you go on the highway at 5 o'clock, it's congested. Why? It's people all trying to do the same thing, get to the same places. Why is this relevant? As I'm pulling up to leave the community, there is a bus, a school bus nonetheless, with their blinkers on, parked directly in front of my complex, blocking every exit in both directions in the street. Because I'm a thinking thing that tries to go with empathy and compassion first, I rationalize immediately, oh my God, something must have happened. I hope the bus driver's okay. I hope that maybe the bus broke down. As I get closer and I look into what's happening in the bus driver has their phone out and they're looking through the seats. And I know that they do this because in the community I live in, I pass the bus frequently. There's areas where they stop, which is more conducive of where to stop a big ass fucking bus. And it's clear that they're checking for any items that might be left over. That's cool. It's part of your job. So what is this bus driver thinking? And she looked like she was young, right? Which we talk about generationally. I worry, man, that the young people have been exposed to a certain lifestyle and it makes them think a certain way. It's not an indictment. This goes back to this is just the level of exposure. And I worry about it because I worry about my children. I don't want to be selfish. And I worry about humanity. One, because I care about people generally. I want people to do well. And I also want people to do well because selfishly, I don't want no problems. I do my best. Listen, I feel very good that I can articulate myself very eloquently with my thoughts, with my language, with my physical prowess. I'm not the biggest dude, but I work on myself. I got some stamina, and I meet some of the criteria that is above novice levels in a lot of my areas. And I do all that, and the more I work on myself and the more I realize these things, the more I realize how hard it is, the more I realize how sensitive and docile, not docile, how fragile we are. I don't want no problems because I don't want nobody to break who I am, and I don't want to by accident break anybody else, because who wins in that? Nobody. So you do what you got to do. Just miss me with all that. So as I'm watching this bus driver looking for things, I ask myself, what are you thinking? What are you thinking that you're in the bus driving business, the business of getting kids to school, and you clearly know it's rush hour because you just finished dropping kids off, and you know that the buses don't take all the kids, so there are some other cars on the road driving other kids. Why would you park in front of a big ass community where people come in and out of, and the likelihood of them dropping off kids is really high, and you park your big ass bus right in front of the community? Why would you do that? I can't answer that. I don't know. So I question, what are you thinking? It's very similar to one of my pet peeves. I read this the other day in a post, and it's been sticking with me. I didn't necessarily align with the way the person posted it because they snapped a photo of somebody. And that's another thing. In my era, I get that we didn't have phones. We couldn't record things like that. That was not, growing up in the 80s. We didn't have access to that. But what are you thinking when you snap a photo of somebody who doesn't know you're snapping a photo of them and you post it on social media? What gives you the right to take a photo of someone of someone just being themselves, minding their own life in their own world, regardless if you agree with what they're doing or not? And look, if somebody's doing something wrong, there's a balance. Like, how do we resolve these things? If somebody's doing something wrong, it's great. You can record them. You can save a life. So in that way, it's very powerful. But for you to be in Tarjay or Wally's World or in traffic, and you snap in the airport, and you're snapping photos of people in the train station, why are you? What are you thinking that you believe it's okay to snap photos of people and violate their privacy that way? And in the same way, if that was to be done to you, what would you think? And clearly my difficulty with that is, as you're thinking about what you're doing and how it benefits you, you have no care or concern for how it benefits the other person or has a detriment to them. You're only worried about what it means to you. Back to my point, because I'm going to get back to what that means and what are you thinking and why I think it's important that we start thinking a little bit different. And it starts with thinking about ourselves, protecting ourselves. Because when we could protect ourselves, we learn that we should really be protecting everybody else. And if I'm less of a problem to people in the world, then the world becomes less of a problem. right? So if you become less of a problem to yourself, the world becomes less of a problem. If you change your life, you just change the world, because a changed life is a changed world. A changed world is a changed life, right? All you got to do is focus on you. Boom. We'd be much greater. Pet peeve. I'm ranting. Don't take photos of nobody. That's just mean. I think it's mean. But I also question, with the advent of cell phones, like a phone is, I think of a phone, maybe I'm old school. The phone goes here. Why do we walk around in public with our phones on speaker? I don't get it. What are you thinking? And then to be walking on the phone in public with it on speaker, calling somewhere where they're like, last four of your social, zip code, last name. Like, people are verifying accounts on speaker in public. So the information technology person in me, that's massive security risk. The old school in me, born in the 80s, like loose lips, sink ships. Privacy was big. Why do we feel the need to speak out loud? Do we really want to be heard that badly? Is there no eloquence and elegance in privacy and keeping what you're thinking closed and only releasing what needs to be said? Why do we speak in public on speaker? I wonder, what are you thinking? And it leads me to believe, not that you're not thinking, that the realities to all this is, as we become more individualized and personalized, because everything in the world, we're so targeted from a social media and a marketing perspective. Everything is delivered, personalized to you. It's almost like you think this world is just yours. It's almost like we walk around as if this world is just ours. And we're the only one that matters. We're the only one that counts. It's our life. We're so important. It's so special that everything we do and everywhere we go got to be about us and how it impacts us and what it means to me. And in the same way, quite ironically, which is, I would say, hypocritical, I often find in conversation, even with myself, I had to learn this. We have standards for how we believe other people should behave and act, and we'll call people out for how they behave and they act, but then we do the same things. And it leads me to wonder, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? What are we thinking? And a lot of the realization I'm coming to, sort of my synopsis on what I've been observing as I've tried to work on myself and improve myself. It's not that we're not thinking, but we're really just thinking about ourselves. And you should, like, take care of yourself. Self-improvement, self-love, the self-journey and self-actualization is dope. Make sure you're protected. Make sure you're on point. Make sure you're as intelligent and as wealthy and strong and dominant as possible. Because again, a changed you is a changed world. A changed world is a changed you. A changed life is a changed world, right? But it's also not just about you. And the more you work on yourself and think to yourself of how things impact you, you start to come to the realization that other people are feeling this way. But yet in the same way, because we don't focus on this, as it appears to me, as a society, to work on this together as a community, we keep promoting the selfishness of life. We can't really afford ourselves the selflessness of life, that when I take care of myself and the more I start to regulate my emotions, like, we'll click like and subscribe on a lot of things where somebody will tell you, when you react to someone else emotionally, it's really you, it's not them. And you're like, yeah. But then you don't practice it. Because then why do we wind up in the situations we wind up in? Why do we have all this friction? All this, it feels like this intense and palpable cloud of I don't know if negativity is the word, but people are just like on edge. What are you on edge about? And a lot of what I'm starting to learn, what I learn with myself and what I think might be applicable, is you're on edge because you're not as self-sufficient as you think. And that manic, frenetic, intense pace that you create for your life, it goes with you everywhere. And we become so self-centered. We only see how things impact us And we care less about the world around us. But here's the reality too. Success in of any magnitude, in any scale, requires the world. And do you think that God and universe and creator in all its perfection built the world just for you and I or us? Really? You don't think that this amazingness that is life, that everything that is here that allows the world, space and time, all that thing, it's so much grander than you. And yet you're so worried about just you. And you can't realize that if you did just you could help more people. And when you help more people, it helps you. That when I release myself and I come to the realization that I'm secure and good and regulated, I don't have to worry about the friction that you might cause me. I don't have to come out of pocket and tell you get off your phone, even though I want to. I don't have to come out of pocket and bump into you on the street. And all those things like, man, the world, everything becomes a little more fluid and emotionally easier to manage when we just find a balance. And we can't do that if we don't know what we're thinking. And what really I thought was the evolution of my day-to-day as far as what people are thinking and this frenetic pace, my son, after he was already ready, did his hair and everything, my dog started howling. So we were recording the dog. He almost rarely howls. And then my son decided to change his shirt. And as he was changing his shirt, he was like, yo, I'm going to be late. I said, chill. Just, you wanted to change his shirt. Change it. It's just time. If we're going to be late, you don't suddenly become late. Like, you don't all of a sudden, if you're supposed to be somewhere at 8 and you get there at 8:05, you're late at 8. No, you weren't prepared to be there at 8. That's part of the frenetic pace. You give yourself just enough time. So I said, chill. There's no reason to raise your emotional levels. Stay balanced. Change your shirt. We'll get there when we get there. We're going to get there. That's the important thing. And the reality is, because we work ahead of schedule, I try to be 5 to 15 minutes ahead. We build in these buffers. Why is this important? As we're driving, because Murphy's Law is Murphy's Law, it's a 3-minute drive. We have 9 minutes. There's police sirens ahead of me. And there's you can see at least 6 cop cars, and they're directing traffic. And I'm thinking, oh man, what could they possibly be doing? They've been doing a lot of work on the internet by me. They've been adding new lines. They've been adding new infrastructure, building new buildings, building new homes, which is great. So I just surmised, because I always think positively, they must be installing some new infrastructure or building something new. As we approach, and the cop tells me to go around, I now see what's causing the blockage, which is there's one car to my left that is missing the entirety of the front of the car with the airbag fully popped out. There's one car over here, kind of sort of to the 2 o'clock, that is equally spun around in reverse. The entire front of that car is also done, and the windshield is damaged. And then there's another car over here who was crunched in on the front. And all I could think about was how unfortunate this is. And let's just say that at minimum, each car just had hopefully one person in it. And they were all 98-year-old adults. And they don't have much time anyway, because I hate to think about it being any more. It's emotional for me. I don't like the idea of people getting hurt. I don't think anybody does. But the reality, too, is it's also peak hour for kids. It's peak hour for getting to work. It's peak hour for doing the normal things we do in life. Because we do more of the little things than we do the big things. Because life is more about home than it is everything else that's outside of home. And so it got me to think, what were these people thinking when they started their day, when they moved towards the direction they had to go, that they felt like they had to go for their day, when they were in their vehicles safely and somehow were met with a collision that almost assuredly changed their lives and the lives of everyone who care about them. What were they thinking when they started? What were they thinking right before impact? Because you see it's about to happen. And what are they thinking right now? Because that's life. That's life. For all the wonderfulness that is afforded to you, it's equally wonderful and even more so wonderful because it is not guaranteed. And I start to wonder if a lot of the cause of this accident was due to the rushing, the frenetic, manic push to do something we think we have to do. And in that way, we're only thinking about what we had to do and where we had to go and how I have to get there. And now I impacted two other people. Who could have two other people who have two other people who have two other people who care about them? Because generally speaking, most of us are committed to something, some kind of family. We didn't get here alone by ourselves. And that is why the do you rules and self-improvement is so important to me, because I believe if we can think more about the things we do, we can avoid more accidents in our life. They're almost like unforced errors, right? It's not to say that, oh, it was destined to you for you to be, and you could avoid it. Because if you're not constantly rushing, if you're not constantly worried, if you're not constantly applying stress to yourself unnecessarily for things that aren't really that necessary, then maybe you wouldn't have as many accidents in your life. Maybe if you didn't wake up in an accident and treat your body like an accident and treat your mind like an accident and treat your skills like an accident, your life wouldn't have so many accidents. Maybe if you just took some time to think about what it is you are, what it is you're doing, and how you would want it done for you. Not only could you do it for you, but you could realize that fundamentally, everybody wants that for themselves. Because who wouldn't? Why would you be that selfish to think otherwise? Because the power of self-improvement and consciousness and God created and universe and the essence of life is that it's bigger than you. And thank God it is, because otherwise, how would you know life? There isn't a single person here who would want to be stuck on the island of life alone. How could you? Why would you? But yet, we certainly are alone with ourselves, alone with our thoughts, and alone with our emotions. And that is the best place to be to figure out how to improve your life fundamentally across all the spectrums available to you for your life. What are you thinking, man? What are you thinking? How can you think it differently? That's my rant for the day. Day 16. I thought I would get into some rest. Maybe we'll talk about rest tomorrow when I haven't rested. Either way, change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich, baby.